are you? Welcome to my channel. With Valentine's Day coming up, I thought I would give you guys a list of Valentine's reads, but with a little twist. I know that this time of year you get a lot of lists of romance books and, all the love stories and happy endings, but I'm going to give you guys something a little different. For all of you that aren't feeling all the mushy, lovey-dovey, sweet, romancy Valentine feels this year, or if you're just like me and just not a mushy person and like things, kind of messy, this is for you. I'm happily married, but I'm just not a mushy person, and I may read romance here and there, but even if I do, I like it messy and relatable and believable. I have for you 6 horror books that feature toxic relationships and toxic couples, and they don't all have happy endings, and I don't know that any of them have happy endings, honestly. Yeah, they don't all end well. So if you want something a little messy for Valentine's Day, this is for you. And I tried to include something for everybody. There's, the more poetic, flowery horror, there's YA, there's extreme horror, there's sapphic romance. Just tried to give you something for everybody. And I tried to include things that maybe you haven't heard of as well. I know there's the typical like Dracula, classics like Dracula. I didn't include that in here because I'm sure it's one you've already, you already know and have heard of. So here we go. First one is The Harpy by Megan Hunter. I read this year before last, like toward the end of that year, and was obsessed. Now, Goodreads doesn't really have the best reviews, and I'm kind of surprised by that. And I think it's because it's labeled horror, but it's not overly scary. And it's also kind of magical realism. Like, if you liked the movie Black Swan, then I feel like you would like this because it has the same vibes. It's dark, it's weird, and it's more poetic. I gave it 5 stars, loved it. And I know a lot of people on Goodreads were like, it's pretentious, it's poetry, it's more poetic, I don't get it. I personally loved it. It's this woman, Lucy. She basically gave up her career, her life, to be a mother and to be a wife. And, she's devoted herself to that world, and she's been fine with it. She's been happy. Well, one day she gets a call from this man who tells her that her husband, Jack, has been cheating with this man's wife. So Lucy confronts Jack, and of course Jack is like, no, please, I'm sorry. Please stay with me. Don't leave me. And he's like, what does it take? What does it take? I'll do anything. And finally he comes up with this plan. He's like, I tell you what, you can hurt me 3 times. However you want. Like, don't tell me when, don't tell me how, but you can hurt me 3 times and then we'll be even, right? So she agrees. Okay, sure. So the whole time you don't know when it's going to happen or how, you just know she's going to get him. But you don't know how it's going to happen. But there's more to it than that. She's also, this whole transformation is happening. And you kind of don't really know if it's a metaphorical transformation or like an actual physical transformation. I believe it's more metaphorical, because people don't really turn into, freaking birds. But she's turning into the harpy. So you have all these references and all these metaphors, and to me it was really powerful and it was really relatable. There was all this commentary about how, especially as women, he's the one that's cheating, he's the one that cheated, he's the one with infidelity, but she's the one who's shamed. She's the one who is keeping her head down, hiding away, and feeling embarrassed, and he's the one just keeps living his life like nothing happened. He's not embarrassed at all. He's not ashamed. And she's comparing herself to this other woman, like, what did I do? What does she have that I don't have? And, she's not really putting the blame on him necessarily. So there's a lot of double standards. She kept referencing the house and her relationship with the house they lived in, and like it was a friend to her, and the house was like betraying her too. Or, there was a lot of symbolism with the house as well, and I freaking loved it. Like I said, it was very relatable. Why was I the one who was looked at as damaged, faulty? Jake had been unfaithful, But somehow this reflected badly on me. I could tell. Just a housewife, really. Nothing achieved, no publications under my name, not worthy staying faithful to. I thought about all the eyes at the party, the way they'd looked at me, and here he was hiding away from it all, not even ashamed, it seemed at that moment. Wasn't permanence a fantasy? But I couldn't help but want it, a mirage of safety, the pretense that four walls could keep your life, could hold you present on the earth. And then there are little, so you get little bits of the Harpy with the transformation, like little snippets. I asked my mother what a Harpy was. She told me that they punish men for the things they do. So that's the beginning, and then it like escalates from there. Like it just gets more and more, and she kind of more and more loses herself to the Harpy. And like I said, there's all the symbolism with the house. The house had, in recent years, started to seem like a personal friend of mine, something close to a lover, a surface that had absorbed so many hours of my life, but being soaked into its walls like smoke. And then later it says, even though I had been there all day, I looked forward to feeling it again, the calm, automated warmth of central heating, the steady presence of its walls. You know, she's there all day. She's a stay-at-home mom, she's housewife, and she's there all day. So the home has become her safe place, her comfort. And all of a sudden it eventually starts to feel like not so comfortable to her anymore. You know, like it's changed. Things have changed, and she's turning into the Harpy, and all of a sudden her life is just flipped upside down. So, I mean, that's really pretty. And, you know, the whole time there's all these different things happening, and there's all this to unpack. It's just really beautiful, and to me it was really relatable. I ate it up, and it's definitely one that you could read in one sitting, but it was perfection for me. Another more flowery one is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. It's a Dracula retelling. So this one has multiple, it's kind of like a poly relationship, but it starts out like it's written kind of like a love letter from Constanta to Dracula. It's a story told through decades, and it starts out like he comes across her when she is like most vulnerable, which is what he likes. And he brings her back basically, and he turns her, and she falls in love with him. But of course he's manipulative and controlling and possessive. And eventually he brings in two other parties into the relationship. There's an aristocrat woman named Magdalena, and then eventually there's an artist named Alexei. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but those two end up being in the relationship as well. So you have this poly relationship going on. So you have that queer rep, you know, between male, female, and then you have the male-female relationship between both Magdalena and Dracula, and also Constanta and Dracula. It is stunning. The writing is exquisite. It is so beautiful. It's definitely more flowery. It's dark, lush, seductive. It's immersive. It just drew me in, and I couldn't stop reading it. I mean, there were so many quotable parts in this, and so much that I could just keep talking about over and over. But it was the power dynamic, because Dracula's this powerful, you know, wildly powerful being, and then he's got all this control over them, and how they all react differently to that control, and how they all react differently to being controlled and being confined and not being able to have friends outside of that relationship. How they all have their different relationships with each other is interesting. There's jealousy, there's manipulation, there's narcissism. Yeah, it's very dark, and definitely toxic relationship galore in this, but it's so pretty. I sensed pure, exquisite violence behind your kiss, a desire to rend and devour that reminded me more of a wolf than a man. I was always your little mouse, kept in a gilded cage until it was time for the cat to play. There's a lot of references like that where it's like predator and prey. And also there's a lot of references to like she has completely lost herself and her identity to this relationship. Because he's had full control. He doesn't let her have any relationships outside of it. He doesn't let her go out on her own or have anything outside of the house or outside of him, and he has full control over her. I lost myself so entirely in charting the contours of my love for you that there wasn't any room for tracking time. There wasn't any room to examine the past or the future. There was only the eternal now. And he always would make excuses. Oh, you know, you're too weak to leave the house right now. More often than not, love ends in tragedy, but we go on loving in the hope that this time it will be different. This time the beloved will understand us. They will not try to flee from our embrace or become discontent with us. Love makes monsters of us, Constanta, and not everyone is cut out for monstrosity. Oh, it's so pretty. You know, she does love him very deeply, but then she sees the kind of person he is and that he's not who she thought he was in the beginning, because she was completely blind to it. And she sees like what he's capable of, and she has to make a choice. Like, yeah, I love him, but I see what he's doing. So, you know, do I escape? Do I stand up to him? So another more flowery, pretty one is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. I read this one recently and automatically knew that it had to be on this list. I am obsessed with this book. It's automatically on my favorites list of all time. This follows Ro. Ro went through a breakup fairly recently, and she moved back south to like start over, fresh start. She's been straight her whole life, but she meets this girl at the farmer's market who changes all that. Like, she meets this girl Ash and is immediately mesmerized. She's fascinated with her and like has this huge curiosity about her, and suddenly her whole life is flipped upside down. Basically, she's questioning everything, and she's kind of obsessed with her. Like, it's kind of an obsession right away, and you know, she can't get enough of her. She's finding excuses to come back to the farmer's market to see her and make small talk with her, and just she's infatuated. It's classified as horror, and in the beginning I was like, yeah, this sounds more like a romance. This is so flowery and so pretty, and it's really beautifully written. But there's definitely a shift in mood, and you know, as soon as, like, you can feel it. You can feel the mood shift. And I can't say a lot about this, and you want to be careful reading, even trigger warnings, because it'll give away what the book is. And I'm going to be really careful. It's gorgeous, dazzling, stunning, beautiful. I'm obsessed. You have hints throughout, and you know, you kind of have an idea where it's going, but then it takes it even farther than you expect it to, or at least it did for me, and I was blown away. Jaw on the floor, chills, blown away, and this will be in my brain forever probably. Like, I immediately want to reread it. Obsessed. It's just, oh my god. But yeah, definitely toxic relationship. There's all these red flags from the very beginning, and you could see them, and she should see them. Like, Rose should see them from the very beginning too, and she kind of does, but then she's just like, oh, this just must be how it is. I must be imagining things. I'm just not respecting her boundaries, you know, or whatever. And she's just making all these excuses because she thinks it's just in her head. So yeah, you see them clearly, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, girl, get out of there. You see all the red flags, and you know they're there pretty early on. Oh, also, Ro is a literary professor, so you get literary references throughout the whole thing, which was really cool, and I loved that touch. I'll read you a couple lines that aren't going to give anything away from the beginning. Before this moment, she was fairly certain she was straight, but now she is thrown into utter chaos. Ro can stand here being mesmerized. She briefly wonders if eating the girl's food is anything like Persephone slipping rose red seeds between her lips in the underworld. That's all I'm going to read of any quotes. There's a bunch in here. I was mesmerized from the beginning, and like, I was mesmerized with Ash from the beginning. You know, Ro was, you know, she was dying to know more, and she just couldn't get enough of her, and in the beginning, that's how I was too. So I get it. I get the appeal. For the lovers of point horror and YA, I have The Boyfriend by R.L. Stine. I haven't read this in years, but it has, I still remember it. I picked this up at Half Price Books a while back. I read this in my teens, but I still remember it, and I remember liking it. Joanna, I believe her name is. Yeah, I hated Joanna. She's a monster. She's terrible. She's a terrible person. Says, too bad about Dex. He was in love with Joanna. She broke up with him, and then he died. Joanna's sorry, of course, but it's not her fault he's dead, is it? Besides, she never loved him. Boys are just toys to be used and thrown away. But this time, Joanna's gone too far, because Dex is back from the dead for one last date with her. Yeah, this is just, you know, your typical R.L. Stine YA. Joanna is a entitled little brat, and I can't deal with her. I liked Dex a lot, though. And I like I said, I haven't read this in forever, but I still remember that. I'm 37. I read this in my teens, and I still remember it. And I remember liking it. I don't know if I'd like it as much now. I'm sure I would. But I'll have to read it again. I've been meaning to since I bought it. Since I still remember it from that long ago. I saw it, was like, I remember that one. And had to buy it. So the last two I have for you are both extreme horror. Obviously, for any of these trigger warnings if you have triggers. Bloom, you know, like I said, it's going to give some things away if you look at triggers, but if you have trigger warnings, you know, you might want to look them up for any of these. These two are extreme horror. I've mentioned this one before, Maeve Fly by C.J. Leede. The relationship in this isn't the main focus, but it kind of is. The main focus is obviously on Maeve, because she's the unhinged female in this. She's Disney princess by day, basically, and she's Disney princess by day at Disneyland. It doesn't say that, but that's what she is. Her best friend's brother comes to town and awakens this dark side in her. And boy, is it a dark side. Things go off the rails quickly. It starts off subtle, and you're like, what? Like, did that just happen? And then it goes off the rails quickly. So there are Halloween references, there are literary references, there's a Halloween playlist kind of sprinkled throughout, which I loved. It was in my top 10 of last year. He's a hockey player. They get up to a lot of mischief together, and not just mischief. It is depraved, gross, fucked up shit. So, very toxic. And yeah, this will give you all the messed up, toxic vibes if you want that for Valentine's Day. Last one is another extreme horror, and I don't think I can show the cover on YouTube because I think it might be too graphic for YouTube, and I'm not going to risk it and piss them off this early on. I'll show you the back. And that is Toxic Love by Kristopher Triana. Kristopher Triana, I've read Full Brutal and I loved it. He writes female characters really well. Like, I was very impressed with Kim White in Full Brutal and how well he wrote that character. So Toxic Love I've been really interested in for a while. It's another unhinged female, but Mike is a crime scene cleaner. Like, he cleans up after crime scenes. And most people in that field don't last very long because it's gross, it's disturbing, but his new coworker Sage is unfazed by it. So she's been there longer than a week. She's actually lasted, and she's really hot apparently. And so he falls for her. He falls hard for her. And it's like, yeah, whatever she wants to do, I'm in. Like, lovesick puppy, following her around, whatever she wants to do. And she's into some really gross, messed up stuff. It sounds to me like it's more gross and disturbing. Sounds really good though. I've heard it's twisted and yeah, pretty depraved, but if extreme horror and unhinged females are your thing, then you may like it. Some of the things on the back, it says, warning, this book contains hazardous material. Handle with extreme caution. Exposure to its contents can cause severe damage to one's health. And then some of the little reviews on the back. One of the most exciting and disturbing voices in extreme horror in quite some time. No level of hazmat suits will help. No amount of showers and scalding bleach will let you feel clean again. Whatever style or mode Triana is writing in, the voice matches it unfailingly. It's probably pretty repulsive. I've been wanting to read that one for a while. I have not read it yet. This is the only one in this list that I have not read yet, so I can't tell you my opinions on it yet, but I will as soon as I read it. Let me know down in the comments if there are any toxic relationships or toxic couple books that you would recommend. I am always looking for that trope. I love that trope. And I hope you have a great weekend and a good Valentine's Day, however you choose to celebrate it or don't celebrate it, whatever you want to do. And I will see you next Friday. Bye for now.